Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. In a former spa hotel in Bad Reichenhall nestled among the dark pines of the Bavarian Alps, time seemed to stand still. The walls were thick, the ceilings sculpted, the corridors lined with soft velvet, barely audible to the footsteps of wealthy guests. Everything about the establishment evoked an aging elegance. Crystal chandeliers tarnished by the decades, marble fireplaces where fragrant logs burned, and an almost religious silence that hung like an invisible mist. This was where Vasily Petrovich worked, a discreet man with slow, measured gestures. Of Russian origin, he had immigrated about 10 years earlier and had never really tried to integrate. He spoke little, a rough, functional German, and avoided other people's gaze the way one avoids a question one never wants to hear again. His face bore the marks of a silent past, premature wrinkles at the corners of his eyes, slightly drooping eyelids, and a way of hunching his shoulders, as if he were constantly carrying an invisible burden. Inside the hotel, the staff called him the spa floor ghost. Not because he was scary, but because he seemed to glide through the halls, always there without really being there. He arrived before dawn, left after closing time, ate his meals alone in the staff kitchen, and slept in a small, narrow room in the attic, where there was only an iron bed, a rough wooden chest of drawers, and a window overlooking the mountains. In Bad Reichenhall, he was considered an ordinary employee, punctual, polite, clean, but not brilliant. Not unpleasant, no, just self-effacing. The spa, meanwhile, was known for two other figures: Katharina Schneider, a star masseuse from Munich, charismatic, talkative, and master of the art of shiatsu, and Franz Baumgartner, a former sports physiotherapist specializing in golfers' dislocated shoulders and billionaires' aching hips. Clients demanded Franz or Katharina. Vasily was only offered as a last resort. Some clients, even if they had never received a massage from him, rejected him in advance. Too quiet, too cold, too Russian. He was considered unfriendly, incapable of the high society conversation demanded by celebrities seeking attention as much as physical relief. But Vasily never complained. He simply went about his work with an almost mechanical, almost ritualistic dedication. He prepared his oils with care, folded the towels with military precision, and strictly adhered to the spa protocol. Then, once the day was over, he would disappear, return to his room by the back stairs, like a shadow returning to its refuge. No one really knew what he did in the evenings. He never went out into town. It was said that he read a lot, in Russian, that he wrote, or that he prayed. The rare time someone knocked on his door, he answered politely but briefly, and never invited anyone in. Until that evening. One December evening, as snow fell gently on the carved wooden balconies and the hotel echoed with the hushed murmurs of a wealthy clientele coming to recharge their batteries, an unusual reservation arrived at the spa reception. A full-body massage in a private suite. 10:30 p.m. The client requests absolute silence, no direct light, and no other staff present. The message was signed Dr. Friedrich Mann. The name made the spa director, Elke Hermann, a strict and elegant woman with a pulled-back bun and a sharp voice, flinch. Friedrich Mann was no ordinary man. CEO of Mann Industries, a pioneering company in artificial intelligence and cybersecurity, he was among the top 50 richest people in Europe. A difficult, influential, demanding man. And above all, powerful. Elke quickly consulted the staff schedule. Franz had gone to Garmisch for a conference. Katharina had a private dinner with a Swiss investor. The others had already returned home. She frowned. Only Vasily remained. A tense silence fell over the staff break room. "What do we do?" asked the assistant. Elke closed her eyes for a moment. Then she sighed. "Give him what we have." Even Vasily? Even Vasily. She opened her eyes. Her gaze was hard. "This Friedrich pays 10,000 euros per session. He'll get what he asks for. Vasily is clean, punctual, and quiet. Perfect for this kind of client." No one argued. Because here, money spoke louder than prejudice. Suite 314 was bathed in a dim, almost dreamlike light. The crimson velvet curtains were drawn, muffling the sound of the icy wind whipping against the windows. A faint scent of burnt wood and amber hung in the air. The fireplace crackled softly, like an old heart still beating stubbornly despite the years. Vasily Petrovich entered silently, his eyes lowered, his white linen basket over his arm. He hadn't expected anything in particular from this session, except for the same routine, an hour of precise gestures, a polite acknowledgement, then a return to his usual silence. Yet, as soon as he crossed the threshold, he knew. There was something different in the room. A dull tension, a strange expectation. Sitting on the edge of the bed, a man was waiting for him, straight, almost stiff, like a mannequin too tightly fitted into an expensive suit. He had taken off his tie, but his shoes were still impeccably polished. He was smoking without smoking, holding his cigarette between two fingers, never lighting it. His gray eyes, hard and feverish, stared at Vasily with a disturbing intensity. Dr. Friedrich Mann, a name that shook the markets, that commanded tens of thousands of employees with a single decision. A feared mind, a man no one interrupted. And yet that evening, he seemed almost small in that oversized room. A king without a voice. He stared at him for a long time, before speaking in a dry, almost cutting voice. "You're Russian, aren't you?" Vasily slowly raised his head. He didn't answer, but simply nodded. A calm, solid, grounded gesture. "All right. Don't talk. Work." And that was it. Silence closed around them like a leaden blanket. Vasily set down his basket, methodically unfolded a hot towel, and checked the temperature of the oils. Each movement seemed to slow time, as if it were an ancient ritual. Then he approached. He placed his hands on Friedrich's shoulders. And at that precise moment, something cracked. It wasn't spectacular. No divine light, no screaming revelation. Just a breath. An imperceptible shudder in the man's back. Muscles relaxed. Breathing slowed. A dull ripple slowly crept up his spine, like a memory thought dead that returns, intact. And there, in that silent contact, the memories poured out. He hadn't invited them. They came. His mother's face, so young when she died, her worn hands, the smell of potato soup. His father's screams, the slamming doors, the leather belt. Childhood nights spent under the bed, praying no one would see him cry. Then the years of consuming ambition, the elite schools, the sleepless hours, the contempt for others that he had learned to turn against himself, like fuel. He had never succeeded. He had taken revenge. That was the nuance. All his life, he had taken revenge on the world. But Vasily didn't ask any questions. He didn't speak. He listened with his hands. His movements were slow, deep, almost ritualistic, as if he were searching for something beneath the skin. Not a muscle, not a physical tension, but a buried memory. An old wound. He moved up Friedrich's back, like one swimming up an ancient river. And then Friedrich felt shame, fear, abandonment. All those feelings he'd suppressed, repressed, locked away behind his success. They burst forth, raw, uncontrollable. "What are you doing to me?" he whispered, his voice breaking. Vasily did not answer. He continued, tirelessly, like a priest washing a soiled soul. His hands placed with incredible gentleness on the shoulder blades, then the back of the neck, then the tense wrists of this man so strong, so cold, so alone. The massage lasted forever. When it was over, there was complete silence. Friedrich remained seated, his head bowed. Then he stood up slowly, like a man discovering his legs after years of paralysis. He looked Vasily straight in the eyes for the first time. A long, deep, unchallenging look. You're not just a masseur." He searched for his words. "Your hands, they read the scars of the soul." Vasily remained motionless. His eyes, clear and calm, expressed neither pride nor surprise. Just a strange compassion. The compassion of people who know what it's like to fall and never want to get up again. Friedrich took a step towards him. "I offer you €1,000,000. The word fell across the room like a slap. "Not for the massage. To stay? Sleep here. Let me understand. Please." There was no arrogance in his voice. No dominance. Only the naked panic of a man who had just touched something too big and who didn't want to lose it. Vasily still didn't answer. He blinked slowly and stayed. Friedrich was obsessed. He no longer slept. Vasily's impassive face haunted his nights. That non-judgmental gaze, those hands that seemed to be in direct dialogue with what he himself had never been able to name. Friedrich, a man of control, of numbers, of domination, felt overwhelmed for the first time. Not by an adversary, but by a mystery. He hired a private investigator. The best. 3 days later, the first pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. And what he discovered chilled him to the bone. Vasily Petrovich, whose real name was Dr. Vasily Andreevich Petrov, was anything but unknown. An internationally renowned neuropsychiatrist and former director of a traumatic memory research institute in Moscow, he had collaborated with the greatest universities in Europe. His work on bodily memory had revolutionized traditional therapeutic practices. He had treated survivors of conflicts in the Caucasus, children rescued from networks of exploitation, and soldiers returning from Afghanistan unable to sleep without screaming. But suddenly, in 2012, his trail had faded. No more publications. No more conferences. Nothing. The report continued. House fire. Wife and daughter dead. Suspected arson. No charges filed. Russian media on the rampage. Harassment. Threats. Colleagues distancing themselves. Voluntary disappearance recorded in 2013. Documents falsified. New name, Vasily Petrovich. Friedrich reread the files several times. He stood there for a long time, his hands trembling. He thought of his sister, of that letter he had found too late. It spoke of a youth worker, of actions she couldn't describe, of a pain that made it hard to breathe. He hadn't seen anything, or rather, he hadn't wanted to see. And now here was this man, this stranger, who had made him feel for the first time what it was like to be seen without being judged, to be recognized, without having to justify himself. He made a decision. A few days later, the journalists were summoned to a grand Berlin hotel. Friedrich, dressed in a dark suit and gravely staring, stood before a packed room. Cameras were popping. He took a deep breath, then said in a calm voice, "I am creating a foundation for the silent healing, a home open to those whose wounds have no visible scars, to survivors of violence, injustice, and profound loneliness. This foundation will be led by the man who helped me without a word, Dr. Vasily Petrov." A murmur ran through the room. Some journalists recognized the name. The older ones remembered the scandal. The younger ones typed frantically on their keyboards. Meanwhile, in a small house by a river, Vasily was reading a handwritten letter Friedrich had sent him. It contained neither promise nor request. Only one sentence. "You have read my pain. Now I want to help you read the pain of others." He hesitated. For a long time. Then, one foggy morning, he packed his suitcase. Not to regain his lost reputation, nor to correct the past, but because he had felt in this broken man a call he could not ignore, the call of another lost being. Like him. Years later, on the shores of Lake Constance, a discreet center was built. No signs, no advertisements, no website. People didn't come here to heal in the traditional sense. They came to be heard by someone who didn't ask questions. People arrived closed off, broken, angry, or silent. They left changed. And at the heart of the center, in a room bathed in light, a man with clear eyes listened without speaking. He wasn't just touching muscles. He was reaching something words couldn't describe. His name? Dr. Vasily Petrov. But in the corridors, he was simply called, "He who listens without speaking."